Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what's often a very dry subject when said in English. And, of course, you guys are having to listen to it in another language. So it really means a lot to me that you're here listening to that, and thank you very much. I've run a measurement company for 20 years. There's never been so much interest in measurement. But actually, there's never been so many risks and challenges as well that we all face. So I'm going to talk about some of those challenges that we face, and I'm going to give you some practical, common-sense advice on how to think about it. I did a little case study of where things have gone wrong, and then give us some advice on what we need to do to take stuff forward that will work for all of you when you go back to your offices. I know the theme of today is all about change, and right, isn't that right? We live in a world of incredible change at the moment, particularly in our industries. The media is changing, our jobs are changing, everything's so fast-paced, there's more content than ever. So I'd like to just drill into that a little bit. First of all, the way the media has changed, and I love this concept of the national newspapers. Wasn't it incredible that all the news in the world, ever in a day, always fitted exactly into a printed newspaper? And of course, the boundaries of the printed newspaper are gone now, and it's all about digital. And the media is struggling, as we all know, to adapt to that. Jobs are going, companies are going bust. The Harvard Business Review did some research just last week showing that in the next 3 years, they expect 50% of US national newspapers to cease publishing. And in the last month, one of our best-known daily newspapers, The Independent, has announced that it's going to cease publishing every day, and it's going to go just to digital only. And as the publishers adapt, they're going online, they're actually struggling, though, to connect and engage with the audiences and to monetize it. We know about ad blockers, of course. And you've seen this type of stuff. This is from the Daily Mail and from the BBC, where they're trying to trick and to tease us into paying attention to their content. And there's content everywhere, but amazingly, we're not better informed for it. Some recent research said that British people 76% of them felt they were better informed than ever. But when you actually ask them questions about the world's news, they're not. They're much worse than they've ever been. And one of the reasons for that is with all this content, people are only looking at the headlines, and 40% of people only are actually reading the articles. So what does this say about the way that we think about the content and the way that we measure? Of course, PR and comms have changed significantly as well, and you may have heard people are talking about it being the end of the press release, and that media relations is dying. And of course, we now need to find the influencer, and who's got the audience of audiences that we're trying to reach. And as PR people, we're working across other tactics, and we're looking at paid, earned, shared, and owned. And with owned media, we're doing our own content marketing. And we're competing in this sea of noise for attention and relevance. And the mainstream media, as a result, is now having to really question its metrics. And there's a great thought leader in this space called Jeff Jarvis, who used to be a journalist, well, he still is a journalist, but he also has his own blog called The Buzz Machine. If you look online, you'll find he was behind the first social media crisis back in 2006, which was called Bell Hell. But anyway, he is now a thought leader on where the media needs to go. And what Jeff says is we have to move away from the metrics that we've counted on, circulation numbers and impressions or eyeballs, and we need to move away to something that really matters, which is, are we helping our audience to achieve its goals? And I want you to remember that word, goals, because this is going to be crucial. Are we helping them to improve their life and improve their community? Because we face so many challenges. You know, this rise of social and digital media has given rise to this. And I'm sure a lot of you are being pitched pretty much on a daily basis by these different platform companies. There's literally hundreds of them. And the prices they charge are from free to hugely expensive. And they all make massive promises. They're all owned by venture capital companies that are looking to make money out of you, basically. They're all software as a service. They're a one-size-fits-all approach. And they make these great big claims about what they could do. They have beautiful-looking dashboards and beautiful charts, and in many ways you get overwhelmed with data. But my question is, are they counting what's easy to count, or are they helping you to measure what actually matters, thinking about what Jeff had just said? And you know what, I mean, some of the problems with these things is they're not even consistent. So if you were to run your campaign and monitor and measure it in 2 separate platforms, you'd get totally different numbers back. And there's reasons for that. It's because of the speed that they query their APIs and which providers they're actually getting the data from. They also use a lot of automated analysis. And those automated analysis approaches can make a lot of mistakes. But it's not just that they disagree with each other. The numbers that they're counting are losing their relevance as well. And this is the BBC Breaking News Twitter feed. And it has just under 22, I took a screen grab of this the other day, it goes up the whole time, but just under 22 million followers of this Twitter feed. And I think we'd all feel that if we got our client or our company with a nice positive tweet on here, we'd feel really positive about it, that would be good. And we'd all be very tempted to say, well, that was 22 million impressions that we achieved. But actually, when you drill into these numbers, and you can see I've put it down at the bottom beneath here, you can see how much of this is meaningless. So 6% of their followers are just fake accounts. They're just these sort of bot accounts. 70% of their followers are inactive. So that only leaves 24% that are actually likely to even be people that exist. And of course, how many of them would have seen the tweet at the moment that it passed by? Now, if you look at Twitter analytics, which anybody can access by going to analytics.twitter.com, you will see that your best tweets ever only get seen by about 3% of your followers. So what number should we count here if we're looking to base our metrics on some of these metrics of the old days, impressions, reach, and opportunities to see? These numbers are losing their meaning. In fact, here's a stat that I found incredible. 61% of traffic on the internet isn't human. So if you're counting hits to your website, well, 61% of that's not a human. And Google themselves released some data recently saying that 57% of the videos that they distribute end up on sites that are unviewable, and 56% of ads that they distribute are never seen by a human. So these numbers, these impressions, these total numbers that we've relied on for years and years as a basic proxy for measurement are losing their meaning. And these platforms make mistakes as a result. So I don't know if you know who this man is, but I can tell you he is Britain's most influential tweeter. He's not David Cameron or Angela Merkel, maybe Britain's most influential person. No, this is someone, anyone know who it is? It's Liam Payne of One Direction. And apparently, according to one of these tools, which is counting all this stuff that's easy to count, because he's got an army of what they call, I think, One Directioners, of teenage fans, he apparently is our most influential person on Twitter. Now, bless Liam's cotton socks, he was so surprised that he actually said this himself. He said, I just read this and I can't believe it. How can it possibly happen? If I'm influential, the world's in trouble. And what I particularly like about that is he spelt the word world wrong. So, you know, we have to be careful of what we're counting and what it means, because if we don't, bad things can happen. I want to take us through a little story from back in 2010. So Pepsi was doing incredibly well in the cola wars against Coke. It had actually, by competing so hard with Coke, it had forced Coke into a rebrand or a reformulation of their drink. And buoyed with this confidence, they decided to change and to seize the opportunities that digital and social media created. And for the first time in 23 years, Pepsi stopped advertising in the Super Bowl, this massive event for Americans. And they took $20 million of what they would have spent on adverts and instead put it into this, the Pepsi Refresh Project. And it was a great idea, because what the Pepsi Refresh Project did was it said, we're going to ask our community to recommend causes and ideas and campaigns that they want us to, instead of spending this money on advertising, we'll spend it on supporting these great causes all around America. And it will engage the community, they'll talk about it, it will drive all the sort of things that social and digital should be about. And you know what? They smashed it out of the park. So when the results came in, the results that we normally measure, they were absolutely fantastic. So I don't know about you guys, but if you compare these numbers to some of your own measurement, I think you might feel that these are pretty good. 2.9 billion impressions, that's opportunity to see or reach. 3.5 million likes on Facebook, which was an increase of 600% on what they're normally doing. 140,000 plus tweets, 60,000 new followers. Their content marketing, they got 17 million unique views. And there were over 80 million votes. So that engagement, over 80 million votes to their stuff. So I think, when you look at the metrics like that, it looks like a huge success. But these are what you call the vanity metrics. The metric that matters to Pepsi is market share and selling more cans of Pepsi. And the truth is, Pepsi was crushed. In this time, its market share declined by 5%. Which was 8 times faster than it had ever seen its market share decline before. It dropped from number 2 brand to number 3, even behind Diet Coke, which was a catastrophic result for them. This decline represented $500 million of lost revenue. To fix that, they had to put in a massive above-the-line advertising campaign, which cost them an additional $600 million. And the net result was they had to lay off 8,700 people, and that included Massimo Demori, who was the marketing director of Coca-Cola, who had sponsored this, of Pepsi-Cola, I beg your pardon, who had sponsored this campaign. Now, I don't want that to happen to us. Okay? We have to move our metrics from those easy-to-count numbers that are losing their meaning to focusing on what matters to an organisation. And the good news is that the more things have changed, actually the more they've stayed the same. And none of this is rocket science. So I have a definition of PR. It's nice and simple, and it's about getting the right message to the right audience. Well, we all know that, but of course the crucial thing is this bit at the bottom, which is to achieve an objective. And by an objective, what is it that our organisation wants us to do? How is the PR function supporting the organisation? And in English, we talk about this concept of outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. And I understand that that's a bit, you don't really have the words for it in Norwegian. So let me explain what I mean. When you think about measuring communications, these are the 3 buckets, if you like, that English talks about. The first thing is outputs. Outputs is, having done your campaign, it's everything that is generated. So all the press coverage that you get, all the tweets, all the social media follows, all of those metrics that we saw from Pepsi. Those are the outputs. Those are the things that your monitoring and analytics companies are providing for you. But after someone's read the content, the question then is, what do they think having seen it? And that's what we call outtakes. That's the lady going like this. Aha, I've read this content, now what do I think about it? Have I changed her mind? Have we built the reputation of the organisation? And then once they've thought about it, what have they now done? Have they done something different? And of course with Pepsi, we want them to drink cans of Pepsi. And the mistake that Pepsi made was all its metrics are focused over here, whereas the business metrics that matter, the organisation metrics, whether it's a charity-like plan or whether it's a bank, are focused on outtakes and outcomes. And this is where we need to move our measurement. And most communications professionals' measurement all over the world is focused here. And that's because providers tend to only offer content evaluation, which is this part. And you need to get data from other parts of your organisation to move over to the right-hand side. And that's why the trade association that I represent, AMEC, came up with the Barcelona principles with 5 or 6 other global trade associations. And these are them. You can find them online. But they're just some key ones I want to put out. They're most famous for saying that advertising value equivalents are not the value of PR. And we haven't got time to go into why they're not, but I've written an article with 16 reasons why AVEs don't measure PR, which I'd be happy to share with people afterwards. But the key things that they're talking about, there are sort of 30,000-foot view, if you like, are that we need to move from measuring outputs to measuring outcomes. So not counting that stuff that Pepsi was doing, but how's it affected the business. We need to map it to the organisational objectives. We need to set goals. You can't measure if you haven't set a plan and set a goal first. We can't just start doing stuff. We have to agree with our bosses. How does PR support this organisation? So they're a 30,000-metre view, if you like. The question then is, well, how do I use that in my organisation? I want you all to be able to go back to work and start using some of this stuff. And actually, it's reasonably straightforward. The first thing we need to do, of course, is understand our organisational goals and objectives, whatever they might be. And how does PR support that? What is it that your boss wants you to do? Because the answer won't be, get me 5 press clippings. What is it? So a really great question to ask is why, repeatedly, to get to understand that. Then once we understand that, then we do the PR strategy and then the tactics. And somebody once said to me, you know, the easy way to think about strategy is it's everything that happens above your shoulders, in other words, your plan, what you're thinking about here, and tactics, everything that happens below your shoulders, so what you do. And it's only when we've worked through that process that we can possibly understand how on earth are we going to monitor and measure the success of this. And so only at this point can we think about the tools and services that we need. And the number one problem that I see happening again and again and again is people decide to do a digital or social media program and they come charging in at the bottom. They're doing the program and they think, well, I better monitor it and measure it, and they buy a tool. And then they wonder why the tool's giving them a whole load of charts that don't mean anything and aren't helping them measure what matters. So my big tip is start at the top, don't start down at the bottom. So how does this look then, just to sort of recap? If we start at the left and work left to right on the top row and then the bottom row, we start with our organisational objectives. What are they trying to achieve? How does PR, how does comms support that? Then we do our creative idea. We set our benchmarks, our KPIs, we define success. And then the bottom row is all about actually doing it. So the activity, and then of course we need to count our outputs. Of course we do, because that's a result of our activity. But we need to look at how we feed that in, how we feed in the outtakes and the outcomes. And of course, in Pepsi's case there, it's repeated sales. So how can you use something that's easy to use? Because, as I said, this isn't rocket science, and start using it immediately. Well, everything begins with your organisation. So make sure you start there. What are your organisational objectives? And then you think about the routes to your audience that you've got. And I think you've probably heard of PASO, this concept of paid, earned, shared, and owned media. So these are the different routes to our target audiences that we have. And then we need to step across the process, because what I want to help you to do is to tell the story of your campaign and why it mattered. This is how you prove value in the age of accountability. So we start with our plan. What was our plan? Why did we do this stuff? What did we plan to do in each of these different channels? Then we measure what we actually did, our activities. It's all very straightforward. We then collect our outputs, so the press cuttings and the social media stuff. It still has value. It's the breadcrumb trail to those outtakes and outcomes. So we need to capture them. But most importantly, we need to focus here on the outtakes and the outcomes and the impact on the organisation. And you'll see that these two boxes are not separated by rows like the other one. They're all in one big group. Because I'm not trying to suggest that you should do attribution modelling on exactly which outcome was from what channel. That's more complex than you actually need. But if you were to map your existing metrics, my challenge to you is I think you would find, like I would do, that the metrics stop here, where Pepsi was. And I want you to move it to the right. And I want you to move your metrics to the metrics that your organisations care about. We're under pressure, silos are coming down, we're competing with advertising, we live in the age of accountability. The way to prove value is not to use an advertising value equivalent, it's to show how you supported your organisation with its objectives, whatever its objectives might be. So this is a nice, simple approach that just allows you in a credible and meaningful way to tell the story. You need to get some of this data from, most of it will exist in your organisation already, whether it's your web team who have access to the Google Analytics or whatever you're using on your website, market research, brand measurement, all this data will be existing within your organisation, and you need to just get it together to tell the story. And so, to go back to that image from Pepsi, I challenge you to say, what do you guys care about? You know, do you care about just counting the numbers that are big but meaningless? Or do you care about really proving the value of what you do? And what you do has enormous value, proving it in a credible and meaningful way. And if you're going to do that, then the big change that I'm asking you for your measurement is to move away from just counting this easy-to-count stuff and to move towards really measuring what matters. And if any of what I've been saying resonates with you, then I would ask you to consider coming in June to London, where AMEC is hosting the next International Measurement Conference. There'll be 250 people from 40 different countries around the world all coming together to talk about measurement and making measurement, making it matter. And at that conference, we'll be launching an interactive version of that framework, which will have all kinds of tool tips, and it will lead you through the process step by step. It will tell you what type of data you should be considering in different places, where you can get that information so that you can put it together to tell the success of the work that you do. So that's it from me. Oh, one final thing, and I'm delighted to say the Norwegian PR Association has very kindly agreed to support that, and will be providing a Norwegian translated version of it as well. So we'll be working with you guys, making sure that you have that in an easier language to understand than mine. So thank you, everybody, very much for your time.